Okay, Rich Brooks, thank you so much for joining me on the Career Tips podcast show. Since we're going to start multi-streaming, and yeah, I'm really excited to have you here as an agency owner of Flight in Portland, Maine, and super excited because you've just hired two new people onto your team. How many people do
It's
you have now?
fresh. All the wounds are fresh when it comes to hiring. So I'm ready to talk about it.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, and how long have you owned the agency?
So we're coming up on 24 years. So it's been quite
Wow.
some time. Yeah.
How
We're
many people
starting to
have you
actually get
hired?
okay on the hiring. Over the years, we haven't had so much turnover. I mean, if I haven't counted up the total number of employees we've had over the years, but I guess it's probably around 20 to 25.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. And now you're up to 10.
And now we're up to 10. This is the biggest we've ever been.
That's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you have brand new or recently renovated space for everybody to settle into after
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah, exactly. We were month to month on our lease for like 6 years, and then I said, you know what, we really need an upgrade, and talked to the landlord, and he's like, yeah, I'll do all the things you've asked for. Just give me 10-year lease. I said, no problem. This is, we're going to be here forever. And then COVID struck, halfway through construction. So I have been into the new office. It looks cool, albeit empty, and I look forward to actually using it. I mean, it's right on the waterfront. It's in a historic building. They took out all those drop ceilings. So now you see the actual beams that they used
Oh,
to
so
hang
cool.
banana bunches when they came off of the boats. It's crazy. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. That's awesome. And Portland downtown, that area is spectacular. It's really
Oh, I
great.
love it. Yeah, great energy
Yeah.
year round.
Yeah. Well, and I think
Normally.
Maine is one of those places that is a little bit undiscovered, sort of like Rhode Island. So if you like the outdoors, if you like to ski, if you like to hike, Flight would be a great spot.
Absolutely. 3 years ago, we were undiscovered, but then all of a sudden, I guess the word got out because it gets packed in the summertime.
Yeah.
But even in the off season, there's still a lot more people than when I first moved up here in '99.
Yeah.
But it's still manageable compared to some bigger cities for sure.
Yeah. And where are you from originally?
I grew up outside of Boston. I grew up in a town called Needham, Mass.
Oh, all right. I know Needham. Good. So tell us a little bit about your trajectory and your background as an agency owner for 24 years. That's really exciting. What led to that?
Yeah, there certainly wasn't the plan that I would be doing this nearly a quarter of a century later. I can tell you that. I was doing medical sales for another company, which was incredibly important in my growth because it taught me how to do sales. And I was reading articles about the internet, and I was really frustrated that the journalists at the Boston Globe seemed to know more about computers than I did, because I'd always thought of myself as kind of like a computer guy. And so I just, bought an old computer, and I started fooling around on the computer, and I found the internet, and I built a website for my company that I was working for at the time. And they liked it so much that they took me off the road and they put me in the office, which was the beginning of the end of me working for that company, because I was not really where I wanted to be. But I just decided that I would try to be on my own for a little while. I'd build some websites and have some laughs and not work for anybody for a couple of years. And then at some point, the programmers would learn how to design, or the designers would learn how to program, and I'd be out of a job. But as I've discovered over the years, you can just hire talented people and they will work with you to build something. So that's kind of the way that it all started. And then over the years, I just continued to add more people to the team, people who are much better designers, much better coders, much better, I hate to say this, marketers than me. And it's been a really fun, interesting ride building this company.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And so your background is sales, and that's one
Well, my
that's,
background is being an English major with the idea that I was going to be a professor one day. But
and you
yeah,
are.
and I am, right. And having a sales background, it was definitely instrumental, because I think when I first started, a lot of people were building websites using rudimentary tools like me, but they were introverts. Like, they didn't know how to sell or anything. And I felt comfortable going and doing cold calls and talking to people about, the importance of getting a website up and running. And that definitely helped me along the way in terms of building up the agency.
That's fantastic. So your most recent hires, can you tell me a little bit about them, about those
Yeah, so
roles?
sure. So the two roles that we just hired for were both kind of like entry level, or maybe a step after entry-level positions. One was the assistant project manager. We have a project manager, great project manager in Lindsay Babian. And about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I elevated her to become our director of operations, which she was more or less doing anyways, but it was time to really acknowledge that. And so she's taken on a bigger role at the company. I felt more comfortable giving everything I didn't want to do off to her to either do or delegate. And at a certain point, it just gets too much. So we knew that she needed help. So basically she's got an assistant project manager, and that was one role. And then the newest hire, which she hasn't yet come on yet, but she just accepted the job yesterday or the day before, was for what we call a junior marketer on the team, or junior digital marketer. And she is going to be, we talk about having majors and minors just to keep up with the school thing. So her major is going to be in SEO. We really need some more support because our SEO business is growing so rapidly. And I'm a huge SEO fan, much more than social media. And so we really want to grow the SEO business. And then her minor will probably be in social ads, because that's another area that we just continue to get more and more requests for. And we really are honing that part of the business, and we're getting some great results for the client. So it's important that we get 2 and even 3 deep in all those categories.
Fantastic. And what are some of the qualities that you look for when you're hiring?
Well, for these roles especially, which I think is going to be great for your audience, because these are junior level positions or entry level positions. And I do believe that, in most cases, you're hiring based on the attitude of the person and the references, more so than the skills themselves, because nobody knows SEO intrinsically. It's something that you learn. And as long as you're open to learning and you can learn new things, you should be fine as long as there's an interest there. For me, a couple of things that I'm interested in, and I don't know if this is universal, but I care more about your cover letter than I do about your resume. Because one of the most important things for an agency is to be able to communicate. I mean, that's probably true with every business, not just agencies, but the ability for you to communicate via the written word, because even with everybody doing Zoom these days, we're still sending so many emails every day, plus blog posts, social media posts, all these sort of things, that you need to be able to communicate in a clear, concise, and understandable way. So that's a critical thing. And so making sure that cover letter really gets me excited to talk to this person in an initial interview, that's absolutely key. And so I'm less worried about their actual skill set, but obviously if I'm looking at 2 people who can craft a really good cover letter, then I'm also, if that's equal, then yeah, if one person has experience running SEO or Google Ads, that's definitely going to give them the boost or the benefit.
Nice. Well, that's good to know that, you would place the communication skills over, let's say, some technical skills. And I think it's important because technical skills can change a lot more
Yes.
quickly than teaching communication skills is a whole different ball of wax.
Well, if you knew Facebook ads 3 years ago, but you didn't touch them in the last 3 years, you'd basically be starting from scratch, right? And same thing with SEO. Things change so rapidly in the industry. And yeah, the more things you know within the industry, the easier it is to adapt to changes. But the bottom line is you're going to have to continually stay on top of your learning if you want to stay in digital marketing, because it is so different month to month and year to year.
Yeah, I would say that's probably the number one thing about digital marketing is that you have to be a lifelong learner.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, yeah, you just get outpaced. I had a virtual conference for the past 2 days this morning, and it was interesting talking to people who have been in the industry for 10 or 12 years. Like, well, it was more confirmation of what I knew, and it's just interesting to get a couple of snippets there. And I think you're the person who told me, after a while, Suzanne, you're going to go to conference. You're not really going to learn too much.
It's absolutely true. And I think it's even more true, not just because you and I have been doing this for a little while, but also just because blogs and podcasts and YouTube videos, everything you can learn at a conference is readily available on your tablet or your computer screen. So there's that element of it. But I still strongly recommend that people go to live events when they do come back, because the networking aspect alone is invaluable. And the connections I make, I mean, the last event I went to was just about a year ago. In fact, it was exactly a year ago, with Social Media Marketing World. And even though, I mean, I picked up one or two new things because there were a couple things going on in the industry I was curious about. I went to go, but I was mostly going to see who's a good speaker who could come on my podcast. For me, that was kind of the biggest thing. And also just because I wanted to be seen, have agents of change be a presence, have Flight New Media be a presence. But it's a lot different than the earlier days when all of a sudden I'd go into a room and they were talking about YouTube and I'm like, oh my God, I never realized what YouTube can do. Like those days are behind me. Maybe. I mean, there's probably still a few things that I learned, but I think after a while, you're just going because you want to network with people, find those right connections and grow the business.
Yeah, it's super key. Can you maybe give us some ideas on how you found the people who you just hired recently?
We obviously post things to our website. A number of us have strong social media activity and strong social media following, so we share that on our social media. We usually use Indeed and ZipRecruiter, although I want to say the last two jobs were only Indeed. I'm not sure if we actually use ZipRecruiter. It's not the element that I'm in. I kind of, again, director of operations, thank you, taking that off my lap or my plate. And we used to use a service here in Maine, but I just am not, which makes sense because this is an in-office position. You will be an in-office position. We want you to live in greater Portland or be willing to commute long distances. So we were using some local based services, but they just had less and less of an impact, and Indeed had more and more of an impact. We also do a little bit of advertising on LinkedIn. I will say that the next time we hire, I'm going to tweak things a little bit because one of my frustrations with, I mean, I love Indeed. It puts us in front of so many more people, and LinkedIn also. But the bottom line is when they go through those services, one of the things is people only upload their resume, and they rarely upload that cover letter, which I tell them is essential. So then I'm going through all the resumes and I have to reach out to people and be like, I need a cover letter if you want to be considered, if I think that their resume is all that. So we'll probably use those tools to funnel everybody to our website where we do require that upload of the cover letter along with the resume.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And interesting. So when I do my intern hiring, because it's paid position, you get a lot of applicants, and so we have a fairly extensive process. And it was interesting because I just gave a reference for my intern from a year ago. So she started with me in January, and then by March, everything had gone crazy, right? So basically, the internship kind of ended, and yet I still had to give a reference for this person who was good. But then, even just trying to think about what in particular she was good at a year later was a little bit of a challenge. Normally, my interns stay with me for a year in my student to employment program that I've been running. It's a little bit different with ROI and U, which is concentrated. But I had to say, well, let me tell you a little bit about the hiring process for this internship and how we vet people and all the different gateways that they have to go through. We had 20 applicants. We had 2 who completed all the steps, and we hired both of them. We normally only hire 1. And so this person was one of them. And it was interesting because the woman who I was speaking to, the hiring manager, said, wow, okay, yeah, that's impressive. The fact that you've gone through all that and they've gone through all that really says a lot. And I said, well, yeah, because I don't have time to, I want somebody who's really into it, who's not just going to show up and say like, well, I did an okay job. I want somebody who really is willing to go the extra mile. And yeah, that the whole piece can be really important in terms of vetting people. So following the instructions as you're going through the application process is key.
Absolutely. Anything you can do to stand out within reason, I think is always a good idea. In the old days, they used to say, send it in on special paper or something like that. These days, almost everything is done digitally, but there's still ways to stand out. I know, I had to create my own resume about a year ago to apply for a leadership training session. And I realized I don't think I'd ever put together my resume in all my years. So I had to, I used a template from Word, and then I'm like, oh, well, now I know so many of the resumes look exactly like this because people are just using the template from Word. I would say try and get creative. One of the other things is I don't see too many people that include their photos on resumes right now. And with social media and everybody knowing what everybody looks like, I almost think that that might be a really good thing to do. Just whatever you can do that's relevant to help your resume and your cover letter and just your application stand out, it's not going to hurt.
Yeah. Is there anything particularly creative that you would find inviting or that you've seen people do?
I had a few people, and this is kind of like a double-edged sword, because one of the things is I can't stand when people start following up with me via phone calls and emails when it specifically says, once we've received, you'll get a recognition that we received it. Please don't hound us with calls, because usually we keep it up for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's just too much to handle. And then you get the people who are just obviously ignoring that because they're anxious, they want a job. I understand that. But I did have a few people who were applying for the job who connected with me on LinkedIn. And I thought that was kind of a low pressure sales tactic that I respected. Like, they were showing me that they knew the platform. I could see what they were up to and what they were doing. And I thought that was kind of a little bit of a plus in their category.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think that makes sense, right? And then they've researched you, that they've looked at your company page, maybe. Do you have any LinkedIn tips that might be good for emerging professionals?
Oh, how much time do we have? I love LinkedIn. I mean, I'll be honest, for social media, and because we're in a B2B space, I just find LinkedIn to be really important. And not every hiring person is going to be like me, but yeah, I think, the typical things like make sure that you have a professional looking profile pic. And I'm not saying you have to go hire a professional photographer to take it, but don't take a photo where your friend's arm is still around your shoulders and you just cropped him or her out. Like, that doesn't look good. Let people, like, you have all these different places where you can kind of put things in. So if you're looking for a job, let people know that you're, a recent graduate and you're looking for open to digital marketing jobs.
Mhm.
Build up your resume section, your about section, as much as you can within LinkedIn. Make connections with people that seem relevant from the industry, and follow the right kind of people. Like, I want to see kids who maybe are a little bit above their years in terms of that they know where they're going, that they're passionate about marketing or digital marketing or SEO, whatever it may be. And that can easily be reflected in the kind of content that you share in your profile that's up there, recommendations from professors, all that sort of stuff. Like anything, if you don't have a lot of job experience, those are all good things to include as well. And there's opportunities for multimedia. So, if you did a class presentation that showed how you built up a local company's email list, and you have a recording of that, do that. Or just sit in front of a Zoom camera, right? And just record that and upload it so people can get a sense of your level of professionalism and your commitment to the industry.
I think those are all really great tips. Yeah. So uploading multimedia onto LinkedIn would be really great. Have you just a side note, have you done anything with LinkedIn Live?
I have not, but only because I don't do a lot with live regardless. I think this is my
Okay.
first time on Facebook Live in about
What?
11 months. So
Oh,
it's just not, live is not my milieu. So I don't
no.
tend to use it all that much.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of opportunity there. It's just not a place, it always comes down to how many places can you be and how
Yeah.
much can you commit to any platform. And live is not as intriguing to me in my business as it might be to somebody else.
Sure. Yeah. I think that's good. And then do you expect any new hires to have any specific, I guess, what are some other things that might set them apart?
Sure. Well, if we're really, Portland has a lot of great photographers and videographers, and we even have some hobbyists on our team who do great work. But the ability to create video or to create or to take photos, that I think is one of those really extra things that you could do. I mean, obviously you can be going after a photography job or videography job, but I'm just saying, if you're going after, you want to be a digital marketer and you can take high quality professional photos or videos, that just adds a whole lot to what's going on. Another thing is you could actually be already have developed your own audience. And so if you've got a following of people because you have a blog or because you regularly post on LinkedIn or you have a heavily followed Medium account or whatever it may be, those can all be beneficial things too. And again, it really depends on the type of agency where you want to work. So when I went through, we got probably 100 applications for this most recent junior marketing position. And I knew the kind of role that it was going to be. And we described it like it's going to be, heavy on SEO, heavy on analytics, heavy on ads. Like that's what it's going to be. We're not looking for Instagram influencers. But yet we got a whole bunch of people who talked about how good they were on Instagram and how many followers they had and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, great, that's a plus, but it's not really what I'm interested in because it's not the kind of work we do with our clients. So this is also another really important thing, and it takes time. But if you are going to be applying to different types of agencies, and if you're open to any type of agency just to get your foot in the door, you got to recognize the type of work that that agency does. And so if they're all in B2B, then don't have a resume that talks about all of your B2C. And if you don't know these terms, business to business versus business to consumers. So if I'm talking about analytics and SEO and LinkedIn, and your resume is all about TikTok and Snapchat and influencer marketing, I'm not interested because it's not really good for me. It may be great for the other agency down the street that does beauty products or has a lot of restaurants or that's what. So you have to know your audience. And this is just as true when you're in the agency world. It's about pitching yourself in a way that resonates with your desired client. So if you're looking to get into business with an agency, you need to spend a little bit of time taking a look at their website, taking a look at who their clients are, trying to find out who they're connected to so that you can really hone that resume and that cover letter or whatever else you're doing for that audience. And yes, it will take you 5 to 10 times as long to do that, but you're going to stand out because I've seen those people who publish and just send out the resume to every single business, and it's just completely irrelevant and it's not tied into a location or anything like that. And I ignore those. Like as soon as I recognize that this person didn't read the job description, I'm not going to go any further, even if they're the perfect fit. So I think it's really important. It's better to do a few applications really well than to try and think that you just can succeed by putting up your application or your resume on every single place.
Well, it's the same in marketing, right? We would call that spray and pray.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what you need to avoid because unless people are really desperate, and who wants to work for a really desperate company?
Right.
Unless people are really desperate, they're not going to hire you because they're going to be like, oh, here's somebody who, paid and sprayed. And then here's another person who found my name and connected with me on LinkedIn and custom, maybe even pulled a quote from my website. Like, I really like how you're working with small companies like X, Y, and Z. Like, yes, I know these are tactics, but they showed that you at least did the homework and you're going to immediately rise to the top in my eyes. And I'm not like, maybe I'm not a typical hirer, but I know what I want and I know the kind of agency I want and the people I want to work with. And it's the people who do that extra work, even if they don't know that the outcome is going to be positive. That's critical for me because that's what we do every day in the agency.
No, I think that this directly correlates to what I hear from other agency owners, right? It's you need to, or as I describe it to a lot of my students is tell me how you're going to make my life better, right? Like that's really, I want to come away with, yes, this is someone that I cannot live without. And so what is it going to take to let me know that you A, care, that you B, can follow directions, and that you C, are going to make your best effort. And so these are the tools and the channels that you have to work with. So how do you do that? And by following the instructions and customizing and doing a good job is huge.
Absolutely.
And a good cover letter.
Right. And I'd say I certainly understand that a lot of people are coming to us, and for these jobs in particular, there's not going to be a lot of experience you have. I do like if somebody has some office experience because sometimes people go out, start office work and they're like, oh, this isn't for me. And I don't want to spend a lot of energy and time to find somebody who leaves like a month later because it wasn't the right fit. So I like to see that you had at least one job that was in an office setting, but that could certainly be an internship. That's totally fine. The other piece of advice I might give is I saw a lot of resumes in the last month or two of people who listed every job they ever had. And the majority of the jobs were in restaurants or in bars. And I'm like, I mean, I get it. Hey, listen, I bartended for a while and I waited table. I know how stressful and balancing everything, but unless you can literally give me a reason why that matters to your resume, I would leave it off. I certainly wouldn't have 2 pages of it. I might mention that I worked in the restaurant industry, so I know how to deal with all types of individuals, and just leave it at that. I don't need to know exactly what you did or that you walked people from the hostess station to their table. Like I literally saw that on 4 resumes. I'm like, that is such filler material. This is a portfolio, and the portfolio isn't everything you did. It's the most relevant and best things you've done. So find a way to position it in that way. And if you don't have any experience, one thing I might recommend is find out if there's a nonprofit or a cause-based organization near you and say, look, I just graduated from college and here's all the things I know how to do. And I'd like to do some work for you for free just so I can get my feet wet. Let me set up your MailChimp. Let me build your email list. Let me fix up your website, whatever it may be. And then that you have something that you can point to, and they'll probably be so happy. They'll write you the nicest reference letter ever. And you can just talk about how you improved their website and increased their conversion rate by 50% or whatever it is that you helped them do. Raise donations, got the word out, built up their social media presence. All those things took you a few hours to do. And now you actually have some real world experience that you can point to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also tracking metrics is really important to say they had this many people on their email list, or, this was their bounce rate. And I was able to stem the tide of unsubscribes. There's a lot of different ways. And if you can note those at the beginning, right, then you have a metric that you can show, here's how I helped, here's how I improved. And that's objective, right? No one, like, if they really wanted to, when you're checking the references, you can say, can you just take a look at your, email marketing? That is going to show a sense of maturity and a sense of objectivity that I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like we talked about before, it's about reading the tea leaves. So if you go through their website and their blog and their podcast and you find out that one agency is all about e-commerce, or another agency is all about branding, or another agency is all about serving nonprofits, then you need to speak in that language. When I get an RFP that I want to go after from a client, a request for proposal, I use the exact same words they put in the RFP in my proposal. So they know that I read it and they know that we're on the same page. And really, you should be treating every job you apply for as if they posted the RFP, which was the job description, and you're applying for that. So your proposal to work for them, and try and really create something special for them. I think that would be great. And I'll just throw this idea out. Nobody did this for me, and I don't know how I'd feel if I actually saw it, but when we send out proposals these days, we actually embed a video for me where I kind of walk through the proposal. Everybody out there has a cell phone. Everybody out there's got a video camera. Everybody out there can record themselves. What if you included in a cover letter a little video of you explaining why you're so passionate about the job? That would definitely be something that would separate you from the competition.
I was wondering if you were going to go there and say, that there should be some type of multimedia component that you
It
could
doesn't
reach out
have to
with.
be anything too, yeah. I mean, everybody's making videos all the time, so it wouldn't be that difficult for you to do something. And again, if video is part of the job, then to show that you know how to edit and put together a video, that would be obviously showing off your talents right there.
Yeah, fantastic. What about because we're just about out of time, but any soft skills that you would recommend?
Well, I think we're talking about kids in my mind right out of college. And so some
Yeah.
of these just end up you develop over time. But obviously, the ability to listen, especially during these interviews, you're going to have 1 or 2 interviews probably during the course of getting a new job. Listening is incredibly important. And one of the things that I think is underappreciated is the questions you ask about the job or the company. When people come and we've had a good interview and I'm like, so what questions do you have for us? And like, oh, nothing. Or what's the parking like? It's like such a letdown. Like, here's the secret. People love talking about themselves. So ask the interviewer, like, how did you start the company, if that's their role, if they actually started the company, or why did you want to work here? What's your favorite type of client? Like, who out of your current clients are your favorite and why are they your favorite? Those kind of questions where somebody's like, oh my God, they're really taking an interest in this. Like, I want them on my team. That right there is gold. So I would definitely really think about what questions do you have? And I'm sure you can Google a list just to get your brain started. But bottom line is you want to show that you're as interested in working there as possible. And asking the right questions is a key component.
Yeah, the question I asked Marty Barron when he was interviewing me at the Globe was, well, if you're offering buyouts, why are you hiring? And
Great
he was
question.
like, oh, and really I wanted to know because I was like, am I going to get laid off?
Right. It's a very legitimate question. So those kind of questions definitely are important because, again, it's just about how do you separate yourself from all the other eager people who are looking to fill that role.
All right. Well, fantastic. This was super. I really appreciate your time, Rich. And if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to find you?
Well, I'm the Rich Brooks on every social media platform, so that's very easy. You can check out our website at takeflight.com. And if you like podcasts, be sure to check out the Agents of Change podcast. It's a weekly podcast where I interview digital marketing experts on a wide range of topics. And certainly it's going to give you some ideas of what to talk about when you are on your next job interview.
Awesome. Thank you. That's fantastic. And Agents of Change is definitely one of my favorites.
Thanks.
Okay.